What's up, everybody? It's Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, and on this channel, we break down the trials and cases you care most about so you can understand how the American civil and criminal justice system works. And we try to make sure you understand what your rights are in every situation, which is why we try to walk you through the entire legal process while also answering your insightful questions along the way. And while it's not legal advice, it's always exciting. So buckle up for another episode of The Lawyer You Know. What's up, crew? We're back here again. Second video of the day. This was the planned video to do a little update on the University of Idaho tragedy and what's happening, what the lawyer's saying, what other people are commenting about. I've got a couple clips I want to show you about how a lawyer can affect the process and how the victims' families are dealing with the process, and how there's a little clip I'm going to show you from an FBI investigator that was on some show like Fox or CNN or something, came on, said how it affects the process, said how law enforcement wants to handle the process and dealing with having a lawyer involved or having a victim's family that's so vocal and wanting to talk about this stuff and how it can affect the investigation, affect the case, give us a little peek into the mind of an investigator when there's this additional pressure coming from the outside. So we're going to look through those two clips today. And then I was going to show you the website for Shannon Gray, the attorney that the victim's family hired, but I couldn't really find his website. I could only find his LinkedIn page, which did confirm he was a former DA and handles criminal defense cases. It was interesting. It also said like he's an author and a speaker on different topics, which I thought was interesting. And maybe that's how they found him. It's more of like maybe he focuses on PR stuff or representing people and when they have something going on in the public eye. So I'm not really sure. I couldn't find a lot about him, and I couldn't find an actual criminal defense website. So if any of you have that, you can go ahead and throw it in the chat. Shannon Gray over in Idaho, criminal defense lawyer. And if we do find his website, just like we've done in other cases, we'll pull up his website, go through some of his credentials, and just see why he fits into this role as somebody who understands the criminal defense process, also maybe represents victims, understands how a prosecutor works. He is also an ex-insurance adjuster, which is an interesting just kind of thing to have in the past. So that's all interesting. But yeah, we're here for the latest on this case. And we're going to talk through it together and how the attorneys have kind of, how the attorney that's been hired by the victim's family maybe has affected the process and how law enforcement's going to react to it. Still no suspect, still no murder weapon. So unfortunately, no big breaks in the investigation, although they do think it's continuing in the right direction. So if you're here for this content and you're interested in this Idaho case, hit that like button, please. So we can know, and make sure you're subscribed to our channel if you haven't already subscribed. We're pumped for everybody that's here for this to continue to discuss it and hopefully move towards finding the person responsible for these heinous crimes. So one of the main things that is our angle in this case and that we're talking about is the victim's family hiring an attorney to represent them, to hold law enforcement accountable, to keep the case moving, to make sure it doesn't go cold, and to get information to the family in a more timely manner. Now, whether or not that's being accomplished, we don't necessarily know, but we are going to watch and see another statement here by the family attorney. And we're going to go normal speed because these are shorter clips.
Well, we had a meeting with the investigators on Monday. The investigators, the prosecutor, Chief Fry was there, as a few other people in the room. And, our theme going into that was accountability and communication.
So accountability and communication. And it's interesting. They had a meeting with the family, with the lawyer, and with the lead investigators. And then you can see, I think there's a quote up here in the top left. I think it's possible for ordinary people to be extraordinary. I wonder if that's part of his like motivational speaking or something. So that is the theme. And they're making it known to law enforcement and publicly. That is the family's theme.
Accountability, meaning that a lot of the information that had gotten out had been inconsistent and confusing, not only to the families, but also to, I think, the public. You had the coroner making statements. You had the Bill Thompson, the prosecutor, making statements about targeting, and then that was walked back by Chief Fry and another.
So something that we had a feeling they were frustrated about. Different people making statements, coroners, chief investigators, prosecutors, lead investigators, law enforcement, walking some back, saying certain things too soon, contradicting statements. What do we know? What do we not know? Let's just put forth the good information. And to me, it's almost a double-edged sword, right? They say too much and then they have to walk it back. And then they're also going to have an issue with not getting enough information out, right? So it's very difficult. Everybody here is in a difficult position.
Other statement, you had Art Bedke, within a day or two making statements about crime of passion, and so a lot of inconsistencies in that. Consistency promotes trust, and so part of our theme going in was that there needs to be some accountability within the investigation about having really one voice.
And he really didn't hold back when it came.
So again, consistency and having one voice. And that is really important. And we're going to listen to a little bit of the law and crime in between here so that we can get to more of what the lawyer says. But consistency, right? And that's difficult because law enforcement is trying to make sure they get it right so they're not going too far too quickly. And at the same time, that's frustrating the parents. So again, this balancing act is very difficult.
I mentioned Mabbitt revealed to him gruesome details of the killing. She herself has spoken to the media talking about the toxicology reports, the extreme nature of the case, the possible murder weapon. Well, Mr. Gray was very critical of her comments and whether or not she had a conflict of interest.
Well, I mean, I have issues with the coroner. Number one, expressing all of her opinions over the media.
That's a big no-no, right? And he's saying, I've got issues with that.
I think at inappropriate times, number one. Number two, making a personal phone call and describing graphic details of what she discovered and what she to the family, I don't think was beneficial in any way.
So that's interesting. See, and this is how a lawyer can change the process. That's really interesting. He said making these personal phone calls and explaining this in graphic detail, especially to the families, it didn't help in any way. Now, I think the father of the victim in this case wanted more details, wanted to know what was going on. So again, in his own mind, as he's the victim in this case, he wants to know more. But this lawyer understands that is not helpful in this scenario, what the coroner did. That was not helpful. Now, if she gives it to law enforcement and law enforcement uses it to connect the dots and catch the guy, great. But telling a father these details about his daughter, how is that helpful? And while these victims' families, they want more information, but that's not necessarily the information that is going to be beneficial throughout this process at all. And I think this lawyer is really keying in on, we want consistent, credible conversations and facts and details about this case that will help us move forward in catching who did this. We don't need all these people, investigators, coroners, prosecutors, just spouting off stuff to the media and then walking it back. Crime of passion, targeting, whatever it may be, and then walking it back. Or letting people pontificate and try to connect these dots that make no sense and are just making matters worse for the victims' families.
I don't think she did it out of a place of spite. I think she did it.
No way. Definitely don't think she did it out of spite. I think she was trying to do the right thing in helping the victims' families. And this is what the victims' families are asking for. I can't tell you how much my clients ask for things that I know is not going to be beneficial to them. And I try to explain that to them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Because she was, trying to give them more details. But once you hear certain details, it's not helpful to the family and certain things. So, and I could go on and on about the coroner. The idea that she's a criminal defense attorney at the same time that she's a coroner, I think could present a conflict.
I didn't know that. Like, only in Idaho is the coroner also a criminal defense lawyer? That's wild. I don't know if you guys knew that. Wow. The coroner talked to the teenage sister first. Holy cow. Yeah, this coroner seems like she made missteps left and right. And, we said it when the dad knew all of those details. How did he get all those details? It turns out we just found out. That is very, very strange to me that this coroner, who's also a criminal defense lawyer, is talking to all these people privately. I don't know why it would be a conflict of interest, Lux. I know I heard him say that. I don't know why it would be a conflict of interest. I mean, people can be a criminal defense lawyer, but their job is the coroner. I think she could create conflicts by talking to the victims in the case. If you are a criminal defense lawyer on this case and you get hired and you hear the coroner was making personal phone calls to the victim's family and telling everybody about what they found, could color the way people look at the evidence. I'm not blaming them, American Dreamer, not one bit. I'm saying everybody's trying to help them. And sometimes that help can actually hurt them. And some of the details can be hurtful to them. And so really what they want is for law enforcement to catch the person or people who did this. And they think that if they have more information, they can push it. When in reality, sometimes more information going to the parents is not beneficial to them. It's actually hurtful to them. That's what we're talking about. It's not, none of this is the parents' fault. Not 1 ounce of this is the parents' fault. They're doing the right thing. Oh, someone in the chat. Sorry, American Dreamer. Sorry, I can't follow the whole chat. I thought you were talking about me or this attorney. Everybody should be pointing in the direction with the family in a way that helps get the people that did this. That's the number 1 goal here. And that's what this lawyer was hired to do. And I think just from the 2 very quick snippets, to me, he gets it and he's trying to point them in the right direction. And he's trying to keep the correct pressure on law enforcement. And he's not just, a bulldog that the parents hired. So he goes and gets all this information and gives it to the parents. That's not what he's trying to do. He's trying to grease the wheels of the investigation to make sure it keeps following on track and does not turn the case cold
down the road. And the fact that she's continuing to defend people during this investigation. And she's done it before. I mean, the fact is that there was she was involved in she was a coroner on a murder investigation in Moscow years ago. And she also was the defense counsel on the case, which blows my mind.
I didn't watch this whole interview before watching it with you guys because I like to react for the first time with you. That is insane. I don't understand how that's possible. And I mean, we can talk about different countries having different rules, but sometimes it is very strange when you get into some of these smaller states by population like Idaho, where something like this happens, literally blows my mind. So if you would have asked me if that was humanly possible, I would have said no. I cannot believe that this coroner was also, hold on, I'm looking something else up here because somebody put in the chat that Gray criminal law attorneys is out of Portland, Oregon. And I found it and I saw this before, but it didn't look like him because he has longer hair, but I actually think it might be him. Huh. All right. So we'll look at this in a minute. I don't know. Can you guys confirm or deny if it is in Oregon, if that's where Shannon Gray is from? If so, we'll go through his website just to see kind of what his credentials are. But my mind is blown that actually happened in Idaho, that somebody that was the coroner on the case also became the criminal defense lawyer. And maybe the fact that, I think it's kind of cool to have that expertise and you can look at it and it can help you attack cases. There are doctors that become lawyers. There are lawyers that become doctors, and that crossover in education can absolutely help you in whatever the field is that you end up working. But it is such a conflict of interest to be the coroner on a case, then become the criminal defense lawyer. I would think that, if you have only beneficial testimony, I can understand how I could make it through that conflict process. But my mind is in a bit of a pretzel here. That's pretty wild to think that could happen. That's crazy. All right. So we've heard from the attorney. Now let's hear how having an attorney on the case can be looked at by the investigator on the case. And it's on Fox. And there was an FBI investigator that came on, testified. She also has spoken to people on the case. People are leaking information. I don't know if I'll call it leak, but telling her information. It seems like information is going everywhere, rampant all the time. So we're going to listen to this together, talk about how investigators deal with lawyers on the case, how investigators deal with victims' families on the case, why they give them certain information and not others, and what may be a problem with that. All right. So let me answer a few questions here first, actually. So OP Dog, there's a food truck showing the victims being watched by multiple people. I don't know if I saw it being watched by multiple people, but I did see a couple of the security camera videos and the food truck video. It seems like the guy that's with him is not a suspect. So there's just a lot going on still. Azam, hi, Peter. Why, in your opinion, does the investigation take so long? Why does law enforcement still not offer a reward for info? There is still no suspect, right? It seems like the answer to that is yes, there is still no suspect, number one. Number two, why does it take so long? They don't seem to have a lot of clues. And the second reason for it taking so long is there's a difficulty in going through this evidence, which this FBI investigator is going to explain better than I could. So stay tuned for that. Azam's going to answer part of your question, but it is very, very difficult to understand how these delays can happen sometimes. But if you don't have something that, there's two ways, right? You can either not have a lot of evidence that's pointing you in the right direction, or you're really trying to secure the case down and make sure you have enough evidence to prove this crime beyond a reasonable doubt. Those are the main two reasons for that. And then here, Mama Rebel says they have a lot of information. That's why they don't need to offer a reward. The spokesperson for law enforcement said, we're getting more tips than we can handle. Everybody's been great. We feel like we have all the information that any tips are ever we don't feel like a reward is going to bring us more tips or better tips. Frankly, it can bring you worse tips for people just trying to get money. Yeah, so many people walk through the scene, American Dreamer. Yeah, and we're going to get to that here in just a second. Lita Randolph. Did they hire a private investigator? Does law enforcement work with PI? Isn't that expensive? They did hire a private investigator, according to Goncalves' dad. And I think he said he has 50 years of experience or something, more experience than any law enforcement officer that's investigating it. Law enforcement won't specifically work with the investigator, meaning like bring it in with them or give them the clearance that law enforcement has. But if the investigator brings something to law enforcement's attention, especially if you have a lawyer representing you as the victim's family, they make sure it's looked at. They make sure it's delved into to make sure if it's a legitimate threat, they research it and make sure that it's not a tip they need to take further down the road, or if it is, law enforcement has a lot of resources private investigators don't. So sometimes a private investigator can bring something to law enforcement's attention that law enforcement can dig into even more. A lot of people coming in late. You haven't missed much, just about a 3-minute clip from their attorney, and we're about to get to the second clip. Kathleen R., the coroner/defense attorney is important because she is now defending a Moscow defendant in a DV case not occurred recently. Yes, we have just heard that. It just seems wild to me. I don't think it necessarily makes it. So here's where it can be a conflict, okay? And why this lawyer is probably trying to look, and this is all just working through my head here because I haven't thought about this before this video. But it could become a conflict if she is doing her work as a coroner in the way to help defendants and doing her work as a coroner in the way to find problems with the state's case, to make the state's case worse. She's going up against the state attorney's office all the time. She wants to beat the state. I'm not saying she's doing that. I'm saying that's how the conflict could arise. If this is somebody that's constantly trying to beat the state, that has cases against the state, how could it possibly be an expert witness for the state if they needed to bring her in at trial to testify about this case? And the victims in this case, the victim's family, do not want her to be conflicted out or have any issues, because if it ruins good evidence, important evidence for them that they need to convict the killer in this case, they don't want that to be a problem. They want a coroner that has no issues, that has no conflicts of interest. So that's why this could create a problem. Okay, so everybody's saying Shannon Gray is from Oregon. Okay, so we will look at his website then later on in the video as well. But first, let's hop into this investigator. It's FBI investigator. Let's see what she says about this kind of an investigation.
Well, I was in Idaho last week, and I spoke at length to Kaylee's parents, and they've been informed that the investigation is moving in the right direction, and I really love to hear that.
So she is also speaking. I don't know who this is. This is a FBI investigator, but she is speaking to the family. It's wild to me that everybody's just speaking to everybody, getting so much information and reporting on this information. But let's hear what she has to say about how this process works, and she's encouraged that the investigation is still ongoing.
And while we were there, we told them how much these law enforcement officers want to give them good news. And that was really comforting to them, and a really, obviously, just extraordinarily sad time. There are things that are happening right now. There are some things that are slowing things down. For example, finals were Friday night, so the whole town is pretty much empty. And in order to have an in-person interview or, talk to someone again, normally the cops would just go out right to their house and bring them in and talk to them. But
So Azam, there's one reason for the delay, right? Finals, it is a college campus, and she's going to explain a little bit more as well.
in this particular instance, they're having to send leads to either FBI offices or to local police departments throughout the country where these kids, went home for the holidays. So there are a lot of things that are causing this thing to slow down, and a lot of them have also to do with the forensic evidence that they took into custody. Apparently, this evidence was actually layered, which is very difficult to work with and pull apart and put into its own little bucket. Where, for example,
Azam, this is the other reason why there's the delay. The layered evidence. So many people coming in and out of this house.
The shoe impressions with snow and dirt and rocks and blood all have to be separated out and tested. So there are just so many moving parts, but them working in the going in the right direction meant a lot to me.
All right.
Brutal attack.
All right.
That was more talk about the coroner. Again, I just wanted to skip through it. We've already talked about the coroner enough, so we'll listen to some more of what she has to say.
On something. I mean, look, I know police want to tell the family and friends of victims as much as they can, but sometimes they cannot because it will jeopardize the investigation. How do you reconcile that tension between, I mean, there's no one in the world that feels the loss of these four more than their parents and their siblings and their family, but yet you don't want to jeopardize the investigation. So how do you balance those two tensions?
This is a question a lot of you have been asking me, right? And how do they do this? We know they want to say more. Does the pressure of a lawyer really help? And she gives a pretty good answer, I think, or at least an insightful answer.
Well, it's a very dicey and very delicate dance that you have to do with them. But you let them know that your heart and soul are in this case, that you want more than anything to have justice for their child. But in order to do that, there's all kinds.
So she started by saying it's not just what you say, but how you say it, right? That you don't want anything more in this world than to find who did this. Your heart and soul is in it. You're going to do everything you can to find them. That's not giving them any more information, but it is reassuring them and proving to them by your words and your actions that you are trying. And I feel like some of the victims' families don't feel that way based on how the investigation has gone and their interaction with law enforcement.
Of things that you have to keep quiet, because the nature of a victim or the parent is to be emotional, and that's normal, and everyone expects that. But when you're emotional, you have a hard time keeping things close to the vest. So that's where the problem is. That's where the rub is. And that's why having these conversations with them, keeping open lines of communication is crucial.
All right.
Correct. And you want to make sure you keep that open line of communication. John O'Rourke, wasn't this house kind of deemed a popular hot gathering spot close to the bar scene and fraternity houses? I'm not sure how close it was to fraternity houses. I see people putting that in the chat, but I do know they said that the evidence showed a lot of people were coming in and out of there. So it's not like they can just go through every ex-boyfriend or friend or boyfriend's friend or girlfriend's boyfriend or downstairs roommate's boyfriend's friend, because a lot of people were coming in and out of that house, which is not unusual for a lot of college houses, but it does make the investigation more difficult and take more time, unfortunately.
Stabbing four people is not a federal crime usually, but the feds have resources other departments do not have. Do you have a sense of how involved the FBI is? Are they helping when asked, or are they kind of co-partners in this investigation?
Well, the case belongs to Moscow PD. And the FBI has a program where if you're a local municipal law enforcement agency and you have something that's outside of your bounds, you can actually request for support from the FBI, and it's support to the locals. We do it all the time, and it's a very successful program. So I think they're very, very involved, especially.
We've seen this in lots of other cases and lots of other investigations. It's not abnormal for the FBI to get involved. It seems like they are here, but they're being sure that everybody knows that Moscow police is lead investigators on the case. With
all the social media stuff, all the IT stuff, there are so many students from this school that were at these parties that are commenting on forums such as Reddit or 4chan, And 4chan is anonymous, so it's very, very difficult to find out who the person is that posted these things. So even when something interesting like that comes up and may ring true or may not, they have to do a ton of digging. Again, to your point about it's just taking a lot of time.
Well,
And that's the point. There's just no answer sometimes. It takes a long time. There's a lot to go through. There's a lot of people to talk to, a lot of evidence to get through, some layered evidence, some difficulty. And every day that goes by, especially I have also read some articles about the snow and how that can affect the tracks and the weather changing and this and that, and how we cannot necessarily tell as if it was a different time of year, it would make a bigger deal. So it is very, very disheartening, I think, that it's been this long, over a month. It seems like they still have no solid leads. However, as Chow says, hopefully they have some footage that we don't know about, and that is possible. Law enforcement has made some mention that they're not sharing everything, right? They don't want to help the, person or persons who did this. They don't want to help them hide. They don't want to make it any easier on them. So I can understand, and hopefully they do have some information about the weapon that was used or about who the suspect may be. Kat, Peter, are all these people talking to the families or just the Concalvises? So I believe there's at least one other family of a different victim that has been involved in talking to people and sharing some information, but Kaylee's family is by far front and center and the most active and vocal throughout this process and trying to keep the investigation alive, keep it from going cold, keep the pressure on. Okay, yes, this looks like it is the right person. Okay, and you'll see what I mean. So I'm looking up Shannon Gray here to see his credentials here and why he's a good fit as a lawyer potentially in a case like this. That does not look like him to me because of the hair, but I think now that I've given it a closer look, I think it does actually look more like him. All right, let's see what it says. Shannon Lee Gray grew up, sorry, I'm not able to see this both at the same time. All right. Shannon Lee Gray grew up playing among the trees with sticks and stones in the small town of Salisbury, Missouri. He was a young, curious boy who loved eating raisin pie, chasing lightning storms, playing tackle football on Saturday afternoons, cheering with the Kansas City Chiefs, and watching $6 Million Man, blah, blah, blah. He was a late bloomer. He attended law school when he was 27 with devotion at Oklahoma City University and graduated with honors. Shannon's fate, graduating with honors, always good, and desire brought him to practice in Portland. He decided he wanted to put down roots in the area and cater to individuals who craved the outdoors and green living. Shannon started off doing environmental law, interesting, because he, like many who reside here, had a passion for preserving the beauty, but found it a little too dry and mundane, and he ended up wanting to be in the courtroom, fighting for people's constitutional rights and bring forth deserved justice, okay? So he is looking to bring forth justice, which is why people like this, that have a resume like this, that want to do this, and I don't know this person at all, right? We're just looking at how he projects himself, as we have in other lawyers. Wanting to fight for justice makes sense why a victim's family would want to hire him to represent them, right? In 2002, his quick wit and likable demeanor allowed him to be hired as a district attorney for Monmouth County. So there's another check mark. He was a former district attorney. He knows how the process works from the prosecuting side, from the investigation side, from the charging side, gathering evidence, providing enough evidence to prove that a criminal defendant is guilty of a crime, which when you represent the victim, you're not necessarily prosecuting that case, but you're trying to help the prosecutors. And yes, Girl Scout, we are a big fan of justice. And I use that line so often, I can't even tell you. All right. And he's rapidly became known as a bulldog in the courtroom. That's such a commonly used phrase with lawyers. Being a DA provided him with invaluable experience and vital networking. It truly was his golden ticket to succeeding as a trial lawyer. Shannon served as a DUII deputy, working in the felony and drug property units, and served on the trial unit, his personal favorite, during his time in the DA's office after 3.5 years. Most district attorney's office is just a little behind the curtain. Yes, be a lawyer. Most district attorney's office ask you for a 3-year commitment. So he stayed 3.5 years. I don't know if that's the case, but a lot of them around here say, if you're going to come here 3 years, because we're going to train you, we want you to, work hard for us. Then you go out and be a criminal defense lawyer or work your way up here or whatever. But they usually want at least 3 years, which makes sense. He stayed there 3.5 years at the office. And then he decided he was ready to take the next chapter of his life in 2006 with $6,500 saved and burning desire to become his own boss. He put in his 2 weeks notice at the DA's office and started his own firm. He purely focuses on criminal defense cases. That's interesting. So he doesn't do any personal injury. He doesn't do any civil prosecution of cases. Very interesting. Misdemeanors and major felonies. The firm is dedicated to giving their clients a voice. There we go. Giving your clients a voice and a platform to be recognized and heard. Shannon's colleagues often joke that he has turned to represent the dark side. But the stark reality is there really, truly is no dark side, just a simple search for the truth. Shannon prides himself in being a trial attorney. So rest assured, if a trial is what you need to resolve your case, you are in excellent hands. He lives in Portland with his daughter. And okay, here we go. So he went to Oklahoma State in 2000 when he graduated, but he was an insurance adjuster. That's how I knew it was the same thing, because I looked at his LinkedIn. Insurance adjuster, and then a deputy district attorney. Okay. So somebody who fights for justice, somebody who knows the criminal defense process, somebody who knows the prosecutorial process, and somebody who is a trial lawyer. Okay. So that's who the Goncalveses have gone with as their attorney in this case. John O'Rourke, was there another theory that there were woods nearby and it could be completely random? That's scary. I have heard that theory. There are so many theories. It's hard to keep track at this point, if I'm being honest. But yes, a random part of a serial killing, why they didn't go after the people on the first floor. There's all sorts of questions that go along with that, but it's tough. I am not Golden Har is a new member. Welcome. Let's go swimming. 2 questions. I thought criminal defense attorneys were hired after the criminal was found. This seems like a conflict of interest to me. Aren't coroners initially trained as medical doctors? So that's a separate case, that coroner case. This criminal defense attorney that was hired by the victim's family was hired to try to help continue the investigation, try to put pressure on law enforcement to not let the case go cold, to not have screw ups in the investigation. If the coroner is something that deems to be a screw up and adds damages to the family, maybe there'll be a lawsuit coming, civil rights violations, who knows? The point is, this criminal defense attorney, I believe, was chosen because of his experience as a prosecutor, as a criminal defense attorney, understanding how the process works to try and help catch who did this. That's his number one goal. He's not representing a criminal in this case because nobody's been arrested yet. He's actually representing the victims' families in this case and making sure their voice is heard and making sure they get the information they feel they're entitled to. Let's see. Carolyn, I'm now addicted to your videos. And Sonia loves the videos. That's awesome. I'm so glad you guys are here. I appreciate that. And everybody that's here. And if you do enjoy these videos, hit that subscribe button and hit the reminder bell, because this is what we try to do, right? I'm not trying to figure out who done it. I'm not trying to do an investigation myself. I'm trying to look at it as a lawyer who's also prosecuted cases, who's also been a criminal defense lawyer, who's a now plaintiff's personal injury trial lawyer, fighting for victims, fighting for justice, big fans of justice. So I try to look at it as, what is the lawyer doing in this process? Is he helping it? Is he hurting it? And for all intents and purposes on what I'm saying, I think he's helping it. He is being the better mouthpiece for these victims' families who want justice. They want to get to the truth. But we've seen throughout the process, as they're trying to do that, it can also be a detriment to the process, which they also don't want. So they made a very difficult decision in backing up some sort, or somewhat, I should say, and putting a lawyer there to talk to the lead investigator, to talk to the prosecutors, to talk to the media for them and on their behalf. And they even said, Kaylee's dad said, law enforcement's going to talk to our lawyer now. They're not going to talk to me. And some of the information he's gotten, I'm sure, is going to sit with him forever and has been so difficult to deal with. And it's horrible. And a lawyer should be able to take that news for you, take that brunt for you, filter it, and explain to you what you need to know. For instance, there may be details that lead that one of them is the target without giving the details, the gory details that the coroner gave. So a lot of that, to me, I think can be a benefit. And that's really what we want to focus on throughout this investigation and throughout this process, is how the lawyer can keep this case from going cold. Can't necessarily find who did it. He can't necessarily force law enforcement or prosecutors to do things, but he understands the process and he can hopefully continue to keep it moving in the right direction, because that's what everybody wants in this case, is to find who did it, the right way with the right evidence. And this lawyer, who's also has a lot of criminal defense experience since 2006, is important because he's going to make sure they do it the right way. And hopefully they have a rock solid case when they find who did it. And it's not just based on some loose circumstantial evidence where, again, the victims' families are going to be put through the ringer. And if it's not the right guy or gal or whoever did it, and, you know, they have to do this multiple times, then that's an injustice as well and could just make it worse. Okay. So I appreciate so much. Kuvira, I see your email. A bunch of people asked MedMal questions this week to us, and they sent me an email, and I have reached out to some medical malpractice lawyers in different areas and different jurisdictions where we may not handle it or it's not really up our alley, and I'm waiting for answers back from them. So just be patient. If they give me back the answer, that would be great. Yeah, Eliza, they don't just want an arrest, but a conviction. Exactly. And everybody, you better believe that Shannon Gray, the victims' families lawyers, is on the same page here. He does not just want an arrest. He wants a conviction. Okay, so if you guys hit that like button, and if there's enough interest in this case, we will continue to follow it. Leave me any questions you have in the comments. In a future video, what would you like for me to focus on from this legal angle specifically? Because that's what we like to do here, and we like to provide the content you guys are most interested in. You can let me know that by liking it and commenting on it and subscribing to our page. If you want to send me any personal questions or articles that you find or links to YouTube videos you want me to react to, follow me on social media at Tragos Law here on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. But that's all we've got for today. Thank you so much for joining me for our second live of the day.